Hello and welcome everyone to another exciting AMA. I'm Rich Maloy, the VP of Engagement at Established, the company that powers the Startup of the Year program and the summit. I am thrilled to be joined by Phil Supinski, CEO of Cloud303. So thank you, Phil, for joining us today.
Hey, everybody.
So a quick programming note here is that the way this is going to work, I'm going to kick things off with an overview of Phil's background. And then Phil and I are going to dive in and talk about some of the most important things to get started and to manage your cloud, specifically with regards to AWS. And we want you to take advantage of this session. And so ask questions of Phil. Ask those questions in the summit site, in the chat over there. And we'll get those questions answered to Phil. So if you have a question, please drop it in the chat box during the session. We'll make sure that we do get it answered. And if you'd like to join our conversation on Twitter, use hashtag #StartupOfYear, hashtag GEW2020. And to learn more about Cloud303, visit cloud303.io or c303.io for an offer to meet with Phil or his team of cloud experts. So Phil has been a founder of multiple companies, most recently Cloud303. He's always been at the forefront of technology. And, I've known Phil for a few years, and what I've always appreciated about him is that he combines his technical knowledge with great client-facing skills. And so I'm grateful for that and grateful that you would spend time with us today, Phil. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully this is useful for some people. It's my first time talking to a group like this, so don't judge me too harshly. But I kind of want to kick off by talking about some of the high level things that are out there from AWS that help startups to get going. Things that, and we can dive into the details if you guys have questions. But I mean, first and foremost, if you're on AWS, you have an account manager, whether you know it or not. You guys should definitely reach out to that person. They can open the doors for funding. They can open the doors for discounts off of different services, and they can help you get tied up with a partner like us that can help you with more stuff. And there's a lot that goes there too. AWS pays us to engage with you guys as well. So it just the way to kick it off is either to contact me or contact AWS directly and try to talk to your partner manager. So. Speaking of,
you know what, I didn't give a very good introduction to Cloud303, so maybe you could intro Cloud303 and what your services are and why AWS. I mean, why does
Sure.
AWS care that there's a Cloud303?
Yeah, for those that aren't familiar with cloud AWS partners in general, there's several tiers of partners. Cloud303 is an advanced level partner, which is close to the top. The reason that AWS really engages partners as much as possible is because they can't scale to the number of customers they have, especially as the customers get smaller, it becomes harder and harder for them to provide resources. Just for example, they have what's called greenfield or startup space, which applies to you guys, and it's one account manager for about 1,500 accounts. So if you guys all called him at once, he would never be able to help you. It'd be insane. So they have different pathways to different partners. We're involved in their ILDR team, which is inbound leads. Anybody who calls in for support that gets escalated, we are one of 7 partners that they route those to. Anybody who contacts their partner directly, those partner as an AWS partner manager, those guys have a list of clients and partners that they'll just map out to the partner based on their skill sets. So it helps them scale, it helps them secure things. And one of the biggest programs that we get involved with is what's called a well-architected review. And it's totally funded by AWS. All partners do it differently. I shouldn't say totally funded. Some of them charge extra for their special type of it. But in the case of Cloud303, a well-architected review is 20 hours of our time that AWS pays for, where we're going to go over cost optimization, security, performance, reliability, and operational excellence.
Wow.
And yeah, it's like 300 questions that we go through, and we don't actually ask all those questions. We have a project manager and a solutions architect who'll be on the call at the same time, and it's really just a conversation about what you're doing, how you're doing it, what you're trying to do, and during the context of all that, the project manager's answering those 300 questions. So you don't have to be bored to death with like, hey, what's your disaster recovery plan? Is it documented? Gets really boring. And the best part about that is if we finish that well-architected review in say 5 to 10 hours, then you still have 10 to 15 hours of time where you can say, hey, can you spin up an EC2 instance? Can you just be available to make sure my servers don't go down? It's basically a funding program for driving customer engagement. And when we do that, and this is actually one of my talking points, the biggest concern on AWS is security. So whenever we do that, we always turn on a bunch of security alerts that are related to Center for Internet Security benchmarks.
Like what?
Well, like the Center for Internet Security Level 1 covers things like making sure you have a password policy in place. Strangely enough, AWS doesn't force that on you. So the way we turn it on, we just turn on alerts. So you get a lot of emails saying, hey, SSH is exposed here. This person hasn't renewed or changed their password for the last 6 months, or doesn't comply with CIS standards, which means 12 characters and et cetera. It's a bunch of little, seems like nitpicky things, really. But just as an example, we had a startup come to us last week, signed up for a well-architected review, and before we even got to it, somebody ransomwared their site, totally encrypted their database. They ended up having to send several Bitcoins to get it back, and he just sent me his database not knowing how to restore it. So that stuff happens, and it
several Bitcoins at 15,000 per, USD.
I don't know what they're at now.
Right
I knew it was like 9 or 10, but yeah, I heard that it was going up.
Yeah, but, it's had a bit of a run up lately.
It's insane, but it was his startup. It was the only way to get it back. They had 0 backups. They had it all exposed on a public IP address, and he had an outsourced developer who probably was the problem. They probably didn't have a strong enough password. I mean, it could have been as simple as putting fail to ban on the server to protect them, but they just didn't know, and it's a huge concern. I mean, that cost a person probably $40,000 to just get back in and running.
Oh man, God, that's just brutal. That's
right.
brutal. Yeah,
and it's not that uncommon.
Just basic, yeah, no, certainly not. And those sorts of low grade, cybersecurity, blackmail schemes are so common.
Well, they're just run by bots. It's just, especially if you're on AWS, they know the rough ranges of the IP addresses that are out there. And they know that a lot of people who don't know what they're doing are using AWS to spin things up. So recommend changing your default VPC right away, recommend securing your console access and locking down any access to the world to your actual code or database. But we cover that in the well-architected review. We also do a free scan with cloud conformity by TrendMicro, which is another startup type of tip. First off, we'll do it for free for you. Scan it, tells you whether you're HIPAA compliant in the cloud, tells you if you're compliant with CIS level 1 and 2, can be used for SOC compliance purposes, and it's free to run. In fact, if you sign up for a free trial and let us know about it, then they'll actually send you $200 of AWS credit for after your 1 month trial is up, whether you buy it or not. So, and that's actually funded by AWS. I don't know why AWS pays for you to try other people's services, but you actually make money. And as a startup, you just run the scan. You don't have to buy it unless it actually benefits you. But knowing what your security looks like and having easy links to fix those, if you don't have time or drive to engage a partner, then literally anything it says that is wrong with your account will give you a link until you walk you through step by step how to fix it. So whether you do it through us or not, it's a great tool, and it'll might save your butt.
It might save you $40,000 in Bitcoin.
Right. So I mean, that's that's probably the most common problem people have. I've actually seen other accounts where somebody hired a contractor. This guy got rooted credentials for multiple accounts at AWS, and then he fled to South Africa and extorted these companies to give them access to their accounts again too. So you definitely need to lock down access to your root. I mean, there's so many things that we go through in the well-architected review that are going to save people's butt from a security perspective. But then there's also talking through service and service limits, and service limits are something that's there to protect you. And some things that don't have service limits are actually pretty scary. If you're doing like Lambda development, you can create a looping Lambda. We've seen it done where it loops as many times as possible. This one in particular was grabbing a file from S3, trying to parse it, a CSV, parse it into JSON, and then drop the JSON in another S3 bucket. And it was just looping, downloading this S3 file, CSV file multiple times a second. In 7 days, it racked up about $70,000 in charges. So another thing that you can do, I mean, you can call AWS and they'll work with you on those things, but you should be aware of them and be careful about what you're doing. Set up alerts, so if there's unusual pricing anomalies or billing anomalies,
Yeah.
you get alerted before 7 days, because even if it just ran for 1 day and you had an alert, which is another thing we'll help you set up, then you could save yourself $60,000 under those circumstances. But these numbers should scare you, because they do happen in real life. And that's why we do well architected reviews, because as soon as you've got a $60,000 bill as a startup, you're just going to ghost on AWS. They're going to lose a customer. You're going to lose potentially your startup or a lot of progress. And that's why they're willing to pay us to make sure, or to at least lower the chances that these things are going to happen.
Yep.
So
Yep, absolutely. So AWS pays you to do well-architected reviews for startups.
yes, it's a $5,000 value. They pay us in AWS credits, just forthcoming. And we are able, through other mechanisms, to convert those credits into cash for ourselves. Sounds like money laundering, but it's actually encouraged by AWS. So don't try to turn me in. They already know.
That's hilarious.
I mean, speaking of which, actually, the mechanism we do turn those in to cash with is called a AWS reseller agreement and/or AWS organization. And if a startup or any company joins our org, essentially they pay the bill to us. We pay your bill for you, and then you pay through us. So essentially, we pay your bill with the credits we've collected, and then you pay us with cash, and we convert them. Because of the also other benefits we get when we pay with cash instead, credit's only worth about 90 cents on the dollar to us. But again, just I'm maybe too forthcoming. Everybody doesn't need to know those details, but happy to share.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. Is there any questions that came up, or should I dive into different funding programs? Like, where should
Yeah,
we go
let's
next?
talk about the funding programs, because I think this is another thing is that first of all, the security thing is super eye-opening. I feel like we could just talk about this forever, but
we should probably get specific. I mean, we could do a whole nother session just on security. It's kind of fun, but
yeah, yeah. No, it sounds like it. Actually, so even before we get into the credits, one of the things that I see a lot of I see pitches from a lot of different startups that are trying to help you simplify and understand your AWS bill, like a software service, a SaaS program to do what you do.
right.
I even saw a note from Y Combinator that commented back to one of these companies that this is the single most common business model that they get applications for at YC. Are because engineers are like, wow, this AWS is super complicated. Maybe I can make this easier with software.
Well, I mean, you absolutely need software to understand that stuff. A good one that we use a lot is Cloud0. There's Cloud Checker. One of Cloud Checker is a huge one. VMware has their own. I forget what it's called off the top of my head right now, but any one of those, it just breaks down the data in a different fashion for you. If you join an AWS org for the partner, they usually have those tools for you, so you don't have to pay for them. Cloud0 will actually, anybody who's spending less than $1,000 a month, will give it to them for free in AWS, and then it's a flat rate after that. Like Cloud Checker wants 2% of your bill, which if you're spending $100,000 a month or $100,000 a year, even that's $2,000 for a billing platform. Seems kind of ridiculous, just to put it in perspective. But it is really feature rich, and we'll do compliance checks for you, things like that too. So it's a good product, but there's better ones coming out, more competitive ones coming out, and we're actually building our own too, but it's not ready yet. That has to do with our org. We're a relatively young company.
Yeah.
But check out Cloud0 for that. They probably love the plug. The only downside to Cloud0 is if you are in an org, they have to be deployed at the root level of the org, which means whoever is providing that, your reseller, would need to point that at their data for you. The other option is you can pull out what's called a detailed billing report, where AWS will just drop this gigantic CSV right in the middle of your S3 folder.
Yep.
And then if you can parse through that, I've got a job for you. It's a nightmare. We've got pivot tables. Not all the data is there. You have to pull data from other places, so you can do it yourself, but it's not fun.
So we actually do have a couple questions coming in now. One of them was specifically about that. Can Cloud303 help me understand all the complexities I've found with my AWS credits?
With credits, or it's probably not an interactive question, but there are a lot of complexities with it, and it depends on your situation. But happy to talk through it. I'll be honest that we run into stuff that is unique and we don't know the answers to all the time. And we have direct connection with hundreds of people at AWS, And sometimes it takes us a long time to find somebody who's got answers to those questions. So problem with AWS in general from that perspective is that they just grew so fast that the people who had the tribal knowledge are now at the top of all the food chains here, and getting to them for some of these more obscure answers becomes difficult. So we've got our inroads and we can help, but I can't guarantee anything.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on the question.
But you can go and try and hunt those people downward because you have those contacts.
Yeah, well, and we've got a data scientist on staff who's actually working to break this down and gain additional insights. So most likely we can answer your question. I just know for a fact there's things that we don't know. So we will do our best.
Yeah, this is something I've always appreciated about you, Phil, is that you are very humble, and you're always the first to say, I'm not sure, and I'm not going to promise, and I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, right? And so paraphrasing here, right? But which it's funny because you also have a sales background, but your sales style is very, I think, nonchalant.
I mean, yeah, if there's no value, then I don't want to create one of those situations where you hate me at the end of the day either.
Totally.
So yeah, I'm not. I mean, at this point, I own the company, so as long as we do business with you guys, then we're in good shape. I don't have to like try to drive up my commissions or anything like that.
Totally.
Which is another advantage of working with somebody like Cloud303 or another AWS partner in a similar size is the people you work with actually care. There's a lot of really big partners out there where you're just going to get some guy that's on a salary and he's doing his cookie cutter thing. And there's so many situations that require special attention on AWS that you're just not going to get from some of those bigger ones.
Totally. A couple more questions here from our viewers. Any tips to reduce the bill on Amazon EC2?
Well, EC2, I mean, there's RIs and there's savings plans that you can engage with. I mean, that's a long talk all by itself, but you need to be careful about not overbuying your RIs. And there's regular RIs, there's convertible RIs. Regular RIs are the biggest savings percentage that you can get. And if you overbuy or buy the wrong ones and need to change it, there's actually a marketplace where you can sell them. So it's not a complete loss if you screw that up. But the savings plans there's no way to get rid of them once you're into them, and they're a lower percentage, but they're a lot easier to understand. You pay for a discount on compute. I mean, those are the basic ways, right? And we can talk more about that. I think most people are aware of that, but if you join somebody's reseller org like ours or another partners, like ours, for example, we give you 5% off of your bill. And then we're actually working on doing what's called RI arbitrage, which is where we buy RIs on your behalf, and then we pass the discount to you. So you're not locked into any kind of contract at all. You can change whatever you want, but we give you a portion of the savings that were produced there. And we're shooting to make that close to like a 1 year equivalent RI. We're just not there yet. So your savings on your compute is probably going to be between 12 and 15% right now if you joined our org for that. But other partners do that too. I'm not here to just sell Cloud303, but you got to talk about what you know. So I don't know which other partners do that, but I know it's out there. But 5% at least discount for now. Should I explain how we do that and why? Or sure. I mean, just to be forthcoming, we get every time we pay a bill on your behalf to AWS, we get 7% back right now. So when we get to a premier level partner, which should happen in the next 3 or 4 months, we'll actually get 12%. So by giving you 5%, if you pay the bill with a credit card, we're actually losing some money. But that's how we cost justify it. But then we're already starting to develop our RI arbitrage thing. So if you're in our account, we're not passing these discounts directly on without directly negotiating yet. It's not automatic, so you would come to us, but we're doing arbitrage. So we're making additional savings off your account as well. And every partner does it. Most of them just won't ever tell you about it. I worked previously for a large partner. I won't name names, but that you can save up to 60% on people's compute if you do this correctly, and they pocketed every dollar of it and never told anybody. So, wow. Yeah, they recently sold for $100 million, just based solely on the fact that they had so many people paying their bills through them, and they were making that huge percentage off of it. So I've just told you the secret. Now you can come to me and hold my feet to the fire if I try to keep all the money myself, right? So
I love it. It. Appreciate the transparency.
Yeah, hopefully I don't get in trouble for that one. I don't know that that's supposed to be common knowledge, honestly.
That's okay. So, this is totally not a public event. Definitely not live streaming.
Yeah, nobody will know. Nobody from AWS here.
So. Yeah. Another question here is, what are the biggest challenges you see startups have with getting started with the right cloud infrastructure?
Well, I mean, there's just so many gotchas. It depends on what they're doing, but using the default VPC is probably the biggest one, or not immediately turning MFA on, because if somebody gets a hold of your account, AWS will not intervene with that unless you get a court order. So if somebody steals your account, you're hosed unless you can get a judge to sign something that says you need your account back. So those are the two main things: is secure your account. I see a lot of people, startups and otherwise, like we have people just setting up AWS accounts for disaster recovery, and they think, well, it's just like any other disaster recovery tool, but it's not. It's anytime you set up that kind of tool on AWS, you're building an entire environment that needs to be secured. It's an entire environment that needs to be compliant if you've got HIPAA or SOC compliance in mind, or any of the others. And it's largely over, like a huge oversight there. So but that's one of the main ones, and using the default VPC, because somebody does get into your network and you're on the default. There are bots specifically written that know the default VPC, know the subnetting, know the IP addresses that'll be used, and it makes you an easier target should they get through your edge security. So yeah,
Wow.
so those things. But
So
there's
there's a
so much
whole
more.
industry out there. What I'm learning is that there's a whole industry out there to blackmail people using bots to blackmail people to give them access to their accounts back.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely, that's the whole ransomware thing, and there's a lot of tools you can use to prevent that, like Cloud Endure, or sending backups to a whole nother account just in case. Yeah, I mean, I'm not here to scare people. It doesn't happen to everybody, but people are writing bots actively to try to steal your account. And then if you do get ransomware, don't just, like, they may ask for 10 bitcoins or whatever, but they'll negotiate with you. Just so you know, it's not the end of the world. They know that if you can't afford to pay them, they're not going to get anything. So it's kind of a weird salesman situation. But if you can convince them you're broke, you're going to get your data back for a lot less than if they know you've got money. Which is
Yep.
why you hear about these hospitals getting ransomware. They have no choice. Like,
Yeah.
if that data gets exposed, they're going to be put out of business
Yep.
by HIPAA fines if they don't get that back,
Yep.
and they may get fined anyway. So sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, but
That's okay. It's fascinating. I mean, it happened to a town in Georgia. I read somewhere that they're 2 years since they refused to pay the ransomware, and they're still struggling to get we're still struggling to get systems back online.
yeah.
But anyway, I think I'm going to infer from that last question, but maybe what about picking the right cloud provider
Well, AWS versus GCP kind of thing.
or whoever else, right? I mean, how many other ones are out
Well,
there?
I mean, we're talking to the startup community here, right? So,
Mhm.
I mean, there's not a partner out there that's going to hold it against you, but there's AWS Activate, and then there's GCP startup funds. I forget what they're called, and Azure has their own startup funds.
Yep.
Like, and then
And Heroku is dirt cheap.
and Heroku, right? And I mean, Heroku. I mean, it adds up pretty quick because it does run on AWS, so they're just marking that up and passing it along.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a great platform. But you can jump from provider to provider and take advantage of their credits. So I never hold that against anybody. People are waving money in your face. That's how you get a startup done.
Yeah.
AWS Activate will gives you up to $100,000. I mean, you start off with 5, and that gets you on their roadmap, and then you just have to ask your AWS rep to go see if they can get you more. Um, Sometimes up to 100, and you can do it in chunks of 20,000, 5,000, whatever, but they'll limit it at 100,000, and it's based on merit. So there's some art to selling yourself there. uh, but then the other part of that is, if you start with GCP or Azure, and I'm no expert there, but take their credits, and when you move to AWS, we have this other program called Startup Migrate, where AWS will have a partner. You have to do it through a partner where they'll estimate X number. It's either, depending on the type of startup you are, it's between 3 and 6 months of what it costs for you to run in the existing cloud, and they'll give you that as credits, and they'll pay 1 to 2 months of that to the partner, to migrate you. So you get that, and then you can get Activate after you use those credits from AWS. So I mean, there's all sorts of tricks to optimizing that, but that's potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in credits, if depending on your run rate and everything. And there's no limit to that.
Wow.
That is, just so you know, on hold until January 1. Just AWS uses the last month and a half to wrap up, analyze, and rework some of their funding programs. So any information I'm giving you on funding programs also is based on what was available as of beginning of the month. So,
Yep.
and it may change, but
Yep.
I suspect Startup Migrate's coming back. There's also Jumpstart, where I know this one's going to change in the requirements. I don't know yet, but Jumpstart's where you can scope a whole project. Say you want to use AI ML on AWS, you want to use SageMaker. You go to a partner, we scope it out, we say, okay, it's going to cost, I'm not using this number to scare you, it's usually cheaper, but say it's $100,000 to get this entire environment set up, going, data trained, all that. We can apply to the Jumpstart program, and if AWS okays it, then they'll pay for the entire thing, zero out of pocket for the startup. So, and the list of funding programs goes on. So they're situation specific, but those are just two of the more popular ones.
Awesome. Awesome. Another question for you. Have you heard self-funded and funded startups for AWS? Or self-funded versus self-funded and bootstrapped versus funded startups for AWS?
I mean, yeah, we run, or we work with Bootstrapped startups all the time. You can still get the Activate credits if that's where we're going with this question, and you can still even get up to the 100,000. It's just more of a sales job. They'll give you the 100,000 right away if you're Techstars or you're Y Combinator, but they'll vet you and make you go jump through some hoops and talk to some people about it if you try to get the 100,000 without being in one of those groups. And I know there's some other groups that qualify as well, but those are the names that get thrown around.
And you can get credits for the startups that are watching. You can get credits through Startup of the Year. Wait, this side. That's
Yep. Right. You got it on one of the two. For
I got
sure.
it somewhere. Yeah. Established Startup of the Year. So you can get credits through Startup of the Year if you're part of this year. We gave credits to the top 100 startups for 2020. Talking to AWS about being able to expand that. But so if you're part of the top 100, you have credits that are available for you that you have an email about, and we'll send you more. If you are not part of the top 100, you can apply for Startup of the Year for 2021. Early applications are open. And you can also meet with Phil at c303.io to talk about what's going on with your EC2 and your VPC and your MFA and your LMNOP. And all of the TLAs.
Some other fun acronyms. That's funny.
And I mean, really, it sounds, I mean, you're a treasure trove of information about maximizing your value on AWS, including your credits and, and all the other programs that are out there for startups.
Yeah, and we're happy if you want to just go to c303.io and sign up. Even if you just want an intro to your account manager, we can find that for you. It's easy for us to figure those things out. We've got chat directly into AWS where we can talk to anybody whose email address we have, essentially. Yeah. So we'll find them, we'll track them down, and we can help you out with whatever. Just a heads up, though, we are in the middle of a new website build, and the C303 has our new logo. It was kind of a knee-jerk thing, so it is the real site. Cloud303.io is the old one. They'll be replaced shortly. So.
Yep. Cool. So what 2 minutes left here. What is the number one mistake that you see startups make on AWS?
Just probably the number one mistake I don't see them make, because I know there's a ton on AWS that haven't engaged their partner, is just living in that bubble, thinking you're going to do it all by yourself and not reaching out for these free programs. Like, it doesn't have to be us. If you go to the well-architected page, there's a whole list of partners, probably 30 or 40 of them that can all do well-architected reviews. They all get paid out the same way by AWS, so there's benefit to both parties to do these things. Everybody does it a little bit differently, but engaging in that and getting experts who build this stuff out all the time to look at what you're doing and to give you advice is probably, like, I get a lot of people who are skeptical going in, and they're just coming in for the free work. But if you sit there in a well-architected review, people will just light up, they get excited. There's all sorts of stuff that gets uncovered they've never heard of before. And in some cases with some partners, it leads to other types of well-architected reviews, like diving into possibilities with AI ML. We do that as well. So, I mean, that, again, another talk for another time. I think, you probably should have scheduled me for more like 2 hours, Rich, because this would have been, just kidding.
Definitely. Yeah.
It'll be fun to do again, though. Next year I'll be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, and I think it definitely will. So, the feedback from in chat was very positive, and everybody who's watching was grateful for your advice. We're grateful for your time. We're grateful that you're sponsoring and supporting the summit and Startup of the Year. For those of you watching, while there are a lot of AWS partners out there, if you can't tell, I trust Phil, and I trust Phil with you and with your cloud services. And so go to c303.io, sign up to meet with the team over at Cloud303, get your well-architected review, and dive headfirst into that giant pool of credits.
Yeah. I just thank you for having me, by the way, and it was an honor that people even want to listen to me talk. So thanks for being here. This is new for me, so and it was fun.
Awesome.
Really appreciate it. Hopefully added some value.
Yep, definitely. I think so. I learned a ton. So, and I'm not even technical. So, but very interesting.
Good times.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up today, and have a great day and enjoy the rest of the content that we have lined up for today and tomorrow.